So, okay, so who's on the Portland trip? Most of us. So for the handful who was not on the Portland trip due to catastrophe or otherwise, 30 of us went down to Portland to meet with about 30 leaders in Portland, nonprofit, city staff, private sector, etc. And what we did was, in hindsight, probably the most comprehensive look that's ever happened on Portland's neighborhood greenways, how they make healthy, safe public spaces for everyone, rather than just pipes for cars or pipes for bikes. We looked at public outreach, green infrastructure, tree planting, food carts, pedestrian advocacy, you name it. There was 6 hours of sit-down meetings and another 8 hours of tours with leaders from the city and the county. It was not a weekend vacation, it was pretty intensive. For next year, Vancouver will be a little lighter, I promise. So what we're gonna do is hear from some of the many inspirations that we all took out of this trip, starting with Dongho and Josh. And with no further ado, hi Dongho.
Hey Eli.
Thanks for coming.
We need to move that.
Why don't we, do you have
Yeah, I have a little PowerPoint that I was scrambling to put together. So I apologize that I didn't have that much.
No worries. Do you want me to take care of the GA while you, okay.
Dongho, I'll hold up two fingers when you have 2 minutes left, okay?
So,
Yeah, good picture.
you know, it was a really eye-opening trip, and you know, obviously the big one is the takeaway is you know, how they do outreach. But I want to go to the core of it, which is it's all about safety. This is one of the child ghost bike that I saw on our Greenway rides. And it really highlighted the fact that, you know, what we're doing here is about making our community safe. It's about most vulnerable users, you know, like this child that we saw on our ride. It's about everybody, you know, mothers, kids. It's about bike riders. It's about people who walk along the community. It's about skateboarders. So my takeaway is, you know, the safety really, they have a culture there, and it's really due to the community aspect of it. It's not the infrastructure. It's really how they engage the community and how everybody looks out for each other. This is one portion of it where they engaged the community, created a place for people to gather in Pullman Park, and you know, it's just fantastic. They took this street that was a nuisance to the community, where there was a lot of cut-through traffic, and created this amenity where people could gather. And what happened is, you know, they created, with this process, a place for families to gather and play. And this is when we were talking, I saw a child skateboard down the street, a child swinging on a little rope there, you know, just the gathering place. Mother with a trail bike, there's a couple kids. I mean, all these vibrant activities that were happening just in the short time we were there. And here's a series of photos that I saw. I said, oh my God, this is not a good scene. I took out my cameras and I took it a little too late, but we saw the car coming. You see the 4 kids. They were in front of the car. They saw the car coming. They parted ways. The car sort of slowly inched forward, and then it made this left. And it's like you know, everybody's really looking out for each other. That's what I felt when I was riding on the Greenway. I didn't really have to be on guard, that I knew that others were looking out for me. I know when we were riding en masse that we were kind of a sight, and so everybody was actually aware of us. But when I was riding in a smaller group, I felt the same way, that people were really looking out for you, always making sure that you were given a safe opportunity to cross. They actually stopped at our trail crossing when they didn't need to. I mean, those kind of behaviors we you know, really can't institute unless the whole community buys into it. And you know, look at the street. It's a big, wide, huge street, and people jog and play and live in this community. But if you think about it, it's all about, you know, it's like we have to remind it, you know. So this is our geeky tour, and I also took away a lot of the technical aspect of it. So this is Division Street. It's a location where they were trying to cross this really difficult four-lane arterial street. They created a cycle track in a small portion of it. Really thoughtful design. You can see the little sensor for the bicycle. See Mike Hendricks there about to use the crosswalk. Look at this conflict treatment where there's a bicycle signal, stops the vehicle from turning right, allows the bicycle to go through. So bicycles have their own phase, and then now the cars can go. So it's a very protected location where you don't feel like you have to compete for space. Here's a cycle track, a newly created cycle track on College Street. Very unique design. You can go from the street to the cycle track and back out again. And Copenhagen left. We're wondering, how do you use this? And of course, in our Greenway, some people used it correctly, other people took the road. So a very forgiving design. 41st and Division Street, offset intersection. We have a lot of these in our Greenways. Some challenges. So I took some ideas to see if we can implement it in our implementation. And then, of course, they have just wonderful facilities, and you can see kind of the tires on top. I don't know if you. We rode this a couple times, and I realized, there's people actually threw tires up there. Take a photo. Here is a bus stop, and there's actually a cut through. So if you're on a bike, you can actually cut through here, so you don't have to go to the intersection.
Wow.
And then the other big thing is bicycle parking, and Josh and I talked a lot about that. So I did a little creative thing. So bicycle parking is an art, and you can see it's kind of a creative way to do bicycle parking. It's kind of fun. So one location in front of the dentist's office, they did some brushes. It's very efficient. You can see the parking that's available, and then the amount of patrons this business gets from bicycle parking. It's amazing. We saw this, very wonderful rain garden with bicycle parking integrated, and there's actually the water drops onto that drums and creates this wonderful sound. We unfortunately didn't hear the water, but you can imagine being in the space. And it's everywhere. So as you go, you'll see that bicycle parking is really part of their implementation on transportation. And it's used for advertising. You can see on this bus, the bike rack, they actually have a little billboard. So when it's not being used, they get some revenue from it. So that's my presentation.
Eli, do you want to introduce Josh?
So yeah,
Or introduce
Josh
yourself.
is actually doing 2 events tonight. He just came from the District Walk and Talk and is here with us. So, Director of Transportation for University of Washington.
Cool. So, I didn't bring slides. So I saw we got 13 speakers this evening. You're going to see all kinds of wonderful stuff, and this is my 4th public presentation of the week, and so I didn't want to do any more slides. But so as we saw a sample of in Dongho's presentation, and undoubtedly you're going to see more of this evening, there were lots of examples of great engineering down there. And so I went down to participate in this, to see all of that, to feel it, to learn about it, to see what we could pick up and bring back here to Seattle. And I find myself thinking about the road that you described there, Dongho, which was this great big wide generous road that we felt perfectly safe in, and there were users of all ages and abilities in it. And it reminded me that this is about behavior, right? And so we could pick up the beautiful engineering solutions that we saw, place after place in Portland, and if we picked them up, and these streets that I felt so comfortable and happy riding on, and we dropped them in my neighborhood here in Seattle, I would not feel happy or comfortable riding on them. Engineering alone isn't the answer on this, because what we're really talking about, and where I get excited about Greenways, is not as a solution or an outcome, but as a total, right? This is a first step in a process of changing the way we relate to one another in the shared space of the street. The first manifestation of a new set of community values that we're trying to bring forward. You know, without picking sides in anything, and just for a pure amusement, when we went down, Sandbox Gate had just broken here locally. And as we were riding along, I saw this picture on, image, you know, happening on the side of the road there, and I had to snap a quick picture of it and zap it back to Paulo. And it was a family that had set up their badminton net, and the net was running right up the curb line. So one team was playing on the sidewalk, and the other team was playing in the street. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing or the wrong thing, or, but talk about a manifestation of community values, right? When we are signaling how we want this place to be. And so I come back from this experience, you know, filled with inspiration about the sort of outcome that we can have 5, 10, 15 years from now in the change process, and also with a feeling of caution in that infrastructure is not portable. We can't bring that back and have instant outcomes. This is going to be a long process. It's going to require patience. It's going to require this network of community activists that are perpetuating a social change process in terms of how we use our streetscapes. And I was honored as we sat with our colleagues down in Portland, and they talked about how we were getting it right in Seattle. And that was encouraging and inspirational, because we were down there to talk to the experts, and they were talking about what's happened in the Greenways movement here as a genesis of the community and the power of that. And when we recognize this not as a question just of infrastructure, yes, there's an important role for infrastructure to play in it, absolutely, as that toll role. But when we look at this as a process of community values and a process of social change, what we have here in all of you and in your neighborhood organizations is incredibly powerful, and it is the envy of my colleagues down in Portland. And so I look forward to hearing what all the other speakers have to say tonight in terms of takeaway, to seeing some more great images in terms of infrastructure as we look forward, and to fight the good fight with you all as we begin this social change process in terms of how we relate to one another out in the streetscape. So that's my takeaway.
Okay, now we're going to have several presentations by various people talking about their takeaway from Portland, and we're talking 3 to 4 minutes. I'll put my finger up when you have 1 minute left, when you've gone 3 minutes. So first, Bob Edmiston will talk about dignity.
Do you need a presenter view?
No.
Okay. Do you want me to dance?
You got it. For check. Thanks, that's something. It's on your computer. You need that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't push. Actually, I'm thinking while we flex through this, maybe Julia should go first, because she's not going to need a PowerPoint.
All right, slide-free person. Julia Field's going to talk about the pleasure of biking and public encouragement programs.
So I'm Julia Field with Undriving, and I was just delighted to go along on this wonderful trip. And one of my biggest takeaways really was just to experience in my body how truly pleasurable it could be to ride around in a city and through neighborhoods. I realized that was not a part of my daily experience bicycling, just this pure pleasure of riding a bike and feeling totally safe and not having to worry about how guarded I am about just riding. I wanted to just paint a picture for you from my last day. As I was heading out on a greenway on Sunday about noon, there was probably an 8-block stretch where I didn't see. The only traffic that I saw were two things. One was a woman jogging with a stroller coming in the other direction down the middle of the street. And the other was, a couple blocks later, this couple was jogging and talking with each other coming past me. And that was the only traffic I encountered. And I just loved that the streets could be so just taken fully. I want to mention a few things about the encouragement programs that we heard about while we were there. The city has a Smart Trips program. They do neighborhood by neighborhood, go around and work on encouraging that neighborhood to get out of their cars in many ways. And a part of this is, one of the components about it is where they deliver the materials that you request by bicycle. And it seems like they take every opportunity to get out of cars, out of mail, out of, and just really get into this person-to-person connection with people that is really the whole point, or one of the big benefits that can happen when we get out of our cars. They also have a series of events that they host. There's senior strolls, there's a walking program that takes people to all through the neighborhoods and seeing the different features, so kind of getting to know your neighborhood on foot. They have women by bike and another whole biking program with clinics and classes and all this stuff. Between May and November, there's multiple things happening every week, and really this idea of getting out of cars and being connected to each other and taking the initiative to organize that is really powerful. And then of course we probably all know about the Sunday Parkways program. That's such a special thing. They do 5 a year, the same last Sunday of every month in each of the main neighborhoods, and they're loops that are like 6+ miles. So you can do a continuous loop with stuff happening all over them. The woman I rode with when I went down for one of them, who lives there, she said that many people, serious bicyclists, don't do them anymore because they're so crowded, but it's an opportunity for a lot of people to get out who don't normally ride, and also a really special event. So.
You still have 1 minute if you
Oh,
want.
really?
That's what the one is. The one is 1 minute.
Oh. Well, I think that's enough.
And Sunday Parkways are everything.
Right. Sunday Park. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention about the parkways, that you can do those rides at any time because they mostly follow the neighborhood greenways. But it's also, they take the opportunity to really showcase new neighborhood greenway routes when they plan the events. So that's another great feature.
Thank you, Julie. Bob Edmiston was talking about dignity.
Hello, I'm Bob. So I'll try and finish in 3 minutes. This basically, for us, I have a few slides about what dignity is, and just some slides that aren't from Portland, so you can get a feel for what is and what is not dignified infrastructure. So next. So basically, when you're riding around or walking around, you know it when you feel respected, when you're going along and your needs are clearly not considered. It's obvious. You just feel like it's not a dignified experience, and you know that the infrastructure is not meant for you. You know that you're a second-class citizen. So next. So we have Wendy, which is the willing but wary cyclist persona, which is who we are building neighborhood greenways for. This is somebody who says, I'd love to ride a bike more often, but I'm afraid to in traffic. Represents the majority of the population who would cycle, who isn't now. So just we're all on the same page. So every slide you see from now on, picture Wendy, her kids, and pedestrians walking and how they feel in these experiences. Next. So the infrastructure alone, like Joshua was saying, isn't the solution. These cities are somewhat indistinguishable. We have Seattle, we have somewhere here. I think this is in Seattle. This is in Boston this summer. And this is in Portland. It's the same experience. When you're on a bike, you don't feel like your needs are taken into consideration by the other's space. Next. Likewise, in Seattle, you have places where you're riding, and you're like, you know, you're supposed to be riding at the point of the Sharrow, right? And so you're whizzing along, and you're like, there's a bike lane here, and then you're like, pedestrians have good priority, cars have good priority, you don't matter. What matters, it's like, your dignity came to an end right here, very abruptly. Likewise here, this is in Bainbridge Island in Winslow. They redid the entire streetscape of the place. It's amazing. But you're coming up in this bike lane from the waterfront, and you go, oh, your bike lane ends at this curve. Ordinarily, in the summertime, you have this backed up line of cars here and pedestrians, but you're just facing a blunt curve, so you don't feel respected. And this is bicycle infrastructure here in Seattle, where they put a sign on a post, but in changing things. So when you're riding there on East Lake with lots of traffic, you're like, next. This is in a neighborhood in my area where they have these really nice sidewalks with these really nice rolling curves. So as a pedestrian, using these sidewalks does not feel very dignified. Next. Whereas here's another shot where people on bikes and pedestrians, you do feel dignified. It's comfortable. You feel safe crossing the streets. This is in Port Townsend. This is amazing. Next. Bellevue, pedestrian. You feel dignified because they at least gave you a way around the end of the wall. Next. So the experience of dignity is irresistible. It's low stress. It feels considerate. So go on. So now we go to Portland. When you're a pedestrian and you're crossing busy arterial streets, you have this refuge island. So you can make it halfway, feel safe, get your bearings, make it the other half the way. That's great. They have speed bumps, which they've found really do slow traffic down on the greenways in an effective way. And just when you're riding, it feels dignified. You feel like you're respected just by the other drivers, and it's pleasant. It was phenomenal. And turning here, there's this little turn lane where you can actually get into it and stop. You know, in Seattle, we'd certainly make this long enough for a bike trailer and maybe a few kids following you. But the ability to get out of traffic is great. Next. Likewise, it's kind of fun and inviting. You know, one of these parks here, it has a bicycle tire pump and tools, and you feel like your needs were really considered when they built this park. And when you're coming up to a stop sign here, in your pedestrian crossing, you can go all the way out to the edge of the car lane, and you know you're going to be seen by the car, and you know cars aren't going to park all the way up to the intersection, preventing other cars from being able to see you. So it's not only beautiful, but it's also a dignified experience in it, and you feel safe using it. Next. In Portland, they're experimenting with things like using parked cars to protect bicycles, not using lines of bicycles to protect parked cars. Kind of an interesting concept, but using this, we felt great. Even when cars were parked there, we're like, wow, we're not going to get doored. We have this layer of 4,000-pound vehicles protecting us from traffic. This is fantastic. There's a place for bikes at intersections, stop signs. Here they actually have these lines telling cars which side of the traffic circle to go on, which in Seattle people kind of choose. Next.
Bob,
Yeah. Okay.
you're at 6 minutes now.
Okay. Anyhow, in-route facilities, fantastic. When you get there, they don't take space away from the pedestrian realm for you to park. Next. And a lot of these businesses did really well because they had bike parking right in front of them. Next. And there's business for bikes, for shops, for other things. And you have women, families coming all the way from California to purchase bicycles there because there are no such shops anywhere else this state away. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. interactive and incorporating green features. You have 4 minutes, max, and at 2 minutes and 1 minute, I'll give you a signal.
I'll try and do 2 minutes to make up for it. I only have a few slides, so it should be really short. I just want to press a few points. So let's go. This is my overview. So I can't resist a bad pun. So first of all, 2 signs of progress. We have the speed humps, which Bob talked about, and we're really quite effective in making the streets feel like slow, comfortable spaces where you can get around and not worry about some cars zipping around you because they're late for work. And the other thing that I really liked, which is another small sign of progress, was the wayfinding on top. We call them, I think, little toppers. And I understand that SDOT's working on doing that, so that's super exciting because you do feel dignified when you're riding on it. Oh, look, this Greenway is not only on the ground on these speed bumps and these other infrastructure, but it's also on the sign. So if you're riding along and you're going across the Greenway, you can say, oh, the Greenway is going this way, and then follow it. So it's discoverable, it's followable, and it's just really intuitive because that's where you look for directions naturally anyway. All right, next. So one of my big points is just that Greenways are seen as regional links. These aren't just neighborhood amenities that are nice for community building. They're also important bicycle corridors, not only throughout Portland, but throughout to the connecting areas. So this is Metro is the regional government equivalent. And this is their zoomed out map of the Portland area and surrounding suburbs. And then this is the zoomed in version of the going Greenway. And you may be able to see, maybe not, but this is green with a black line around it, which means it's considered a main bikeway. And next to off-street paths, which are obviously the ideal if you could put off-street paths everywhere, but we're never going to eminent domain them everywhere. The main bikeways are enhanced bicycle lanes, cycle tracks, or low-traffic bike boulevards, which they should really update to saying neighborhood greenways. So the point being that greenways are great to get around your neighborhood, but they're also great to get around the city and the region. Thanks. Yeah, basically next. So this is kind of building off of that though, and something we heard from them, which was interesting because I hadn't heard this before. But we need to keep in mind as we're neighborhood advocates that we don't only advocate for neighborhood greenways, we advocate for safe, healthy streets for all users. And it may come that in a certain area, the most appropriate technology is a cycle track, or Bob, Lionel, and I are working on off-street trails on the 520 project, because that's the only way to connect those neighborhoods. So we need to kind of step out of our greenways bubble sometimes and realize that there are other solutions to the same problems. Okay, next. So the Intertwined Alliance is a bit like the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust in that they work to protect regional open space. So they're mainly focused on parks and open space, but they've recognized that bike boulevards and bike lanes are a good way to interconnect these green spaces. You can see that this is their really cool, if you haven't checked it out, I would go to the Intertwine website and you can zoom around and check all the cool things in Portland. And they have these interconnected lines based on neighborhood greenways. Next. And this is just the green infrastructure, we already talked about that a bit, so next. And just finally, I didn't actually hear this, but I was pretty excited to learn about it. And that Friends of Trees, which is their major tree planting, they're kind of like Earth Corps here is the equivalent. And they have made a concerted effort to plant trees along neighborhood greenway routes, because the green infrastructure is great, but it costs a lot of money. And comparatively, planting trees in people's private yards or in the public planting strip is a pretty cheap way to go. It can have some cool effects both for the environment and just for the usability of the street. Next. And yeah, so that's just kind of recapping and connect. Yep.
Thank you. Madeleine Carlson is going to talk about biking with kids.
Didn't make it any time.
Started from my iPhone. So I didn't go down with the Greenways group. I went a month later. So all the infrastructure stuff I saw was stuff I just happened to stumble upon. So unfortunately not nearly as much stuff as the Greenways group, because when I asked people to tell me where to go, they get this look, this glazed look, and say, there's just too much. I can't give you a list. So I'm happy. So we were down actually a month later for the Feats of Parenthood competition, and I'll have to report that a Seattle family won, because if there's one thing, our hills and our traffic makes us very, very tough. So, so I get a feeling when I ride around in Portland, and there's not really a word for it in English, but in French it's called gesellig. It's just like a comfortable feeling. Both the infrastructure, just the way drivers treat bikes there, which I think between here and there, it's with or without kids on board, but you really appreciate it a lot more when you have 2 kids on your bike. Like on the way over here tonight, just on 10th Avenue, there was a FedEx truck blocking one of the lanes, and the cars are just zooming past me as quick as they could to get around before I got there and blocked off their lane. And I didn't have kids on the bike tonight, granted, but that happens all the time, even with them on board. And in Portland, not this bridge, but a different one, the Broadway Bridge, I think it is, right by the Amtrak station. When we arrived Friday night, a car came up alongside me and obviously wanted to turn right, and my lane went across, and he slowed to my speed and waited for me to like climb this up a hill and very slow. You can see my bike. It was a little embarrassing because he could have just like easily zoomed around me, but he's not from Seattle, so he waited. Okay, so next slide. So in Portland, I discovered there's a lot of stuff that we don't have here, and also a lot of stuff that there's just so much more of. And bike corrals actually, I think, fall into both categories. Because here we have a few bike corrals, but they're big and they're arty, and my bike doesn't fit in them. These ones are just, they're everywhere. There's a lot of sections like here where they're at every single block. And if you have a wide bike or a long bike, they're really, really easy to use, and there's always parking available. Next one. I really like this walk button that was designed for cyclists to push. On my bigger bike, I can have my 5-year-old hop off and push the pedestrian button and get back on in time for the light to change. But this is a lot easier than that. Next. And I really like the directional signs, both with distances and with the time it would take to get places. And another thing there is bike shops that cater to families. There are 3 bike shops actually in Portland that cater to families. Here we don't have any. And a lot of the sales of those bike shops are to people out of state because most states don't have any. There are bike shops that are dealers of brands of bikes that make cargo bikes here, but that's not quite the same thing. Next slide. I went riding with Emily Finch of 6 Kids on Her Bach Beats fame. She's really fast though. I couldn't get a picture of all of us. She's in the front with 4 more kids. And actually only 3. She only had 5 of her kids along, so it was quite a spectacle. What?
Is this mom envy?
No. The speed, yeah, but I would want to carry more weight than I already do. But so they showed me a lot of bike-friendly streets. There was at one point she thought it'd be fun if we took a lane on busy Hawthorne Boulevard. So we did that. That's not this shop, that's a different busy street. But the motors are so used to bikes on the road, we weren't a spectacle at all. No one really honked at us or anything, and we were just like blocking traffic, and it wasn't a big deal. So next slide. Here's a picture of Julian from Ballard riding with his 5.5-year-old, and she rode all over town this weekend, and he was a little overwhelmed just because she's never done that, but he felt totally safe, and she felt totally safe. And one more slide. Just my obligatory bike on the teeter-totter during the competition picture.
Thank you. Cathy Tuttle is going to talk about greenways, slow streets, and micro-business vitality.
So how do I forward this? Just space?
Yeah, arrow button.
Arrow button. Very good. Okay, so this is Jessie Aaron. She's the owner of Carte Blanche. And her food truck supplied the exquisite meal that we ate at Ulta Planning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eli. And Jessie inspired me with this lesson from Portlandia. Location, location, location. Safe, healthy streets are essential to support a thriving micro-business economy. So location, location, location is a phrase you often hear about what makes a business like Carte Blanche a success. In Portland, location means being on a citywide network of safe, healthy streets. People want to be located close to greenways and other safe, healthy streets because it translates to 1, a good location for delivery trucks, 2, a good location for people getting to their jobs, and 3, a good location for people who want to buy stuff. So does the success of Portlandia have anything to do with this beautifully realized Portland bike map? I'd say emphatically yes. 1, the definition of a good location for suppliers and delivery vehicles means there is a free flow of goods and services all over the city by delivery vehicles. In the case of food trucks, that means wastewater haulers, propane tanks, vegetable delivery. These service vehicles don't need to sit in traffic. Why? Because people feel comfortable walking, biking, and using public transit for everyday transportation. I've been looking for a 2012 version of this map, but take a look at the mode split of people biking in Portland. Each of those percentage points, each point translates to about 700 or so cars not on the road. Less traffic means better delivery service. Location for employees. Jesse said, most of my employees bike to work. Everything is difficult in Portland now without money. Carte Blanche is one of 1,000+ food carts and an infinite universe of small businesses in Portland. It costs at least $10,000 a year to own a car. Jesse's employees bike to work and Jesse doesn't own a car. That's $10,000 freed up to try dreams and new enterprises like food carts. 3 is location for customers. You can get on a greenway with your kids, with your whole family, almost anywhere now in Portland, and go out for dinner. And there is bike parking when you get there, whether it's a small food pod, a giant food pod, or that hipster brewery we've been looking at, or an upscale downtown restaurant. There is bike parking. Check out this map. This is where there are bike corrals in Portland. It's awesome. So safe, healthy streets free up money, space, and time for creativity to flourish. There are safe businesses everywhere. Not just food carts, but the pedal lounge, the beer bar, the biking beer bar, and crazy stores like this yarn store. This is photo courtesy of Greg Raisman. And lemonade stands along greenways. Lemonade stands, well, I put in that picture as a kind of a segue because we have a lemonade stand too that's sprung up frequently this summer along the Wallingford Greenway. And we've got pedal businesses starting up here too in Seattle. I was hoping Frosine would show up tonight. She said she was going to. And we're still skirting around the edges in Seattle of making a food cart revolution, but we've got a ways to go there. We do have a slew of new businesses made possible by the cottage food laws that went into effect just this past summer. Now you can sell baked goods, jams, and pickles from your home. And you can grow food and sell it too in Seattle now. City Grown has garden plots that they harvest by bike in Ballard and Wallingford. And they sell to customers arriving on foot and by bike a block south of the Wallingford Greenway. Noe and Becky here are pioneers. They're operating on a wish and a prayer. But I'm thinking maybe we need a Greenways business directory. But let's green up our map first, because the lesson that I'm taking away from Portlandia is that more healthy streets provide locations for micro businesses and a thriving local economy to flourish.
I guess I'm going next. I'm going to talk very briefly about street murals and pocket parks. didn't want to leave. And it really struck me that this is a place that tells people in cars, this is a special place. It's an intersection that people actually care about. So next. In Lake City at our first meeting, we talked about murals and people went out of their minds, and these two girls were at the meeting and they and their grandmother went home while the parents stayed, and they did this while we were finishing our meeting. Next. We now have an ambition to put a street mural here in our civic core. We're running into a few problems with SDOT, but we're going to push it, and everyone really has focused on this as a very important part of our community, and we want to have some kind of beautiful footprint in that place. Next. And many people have gotten extremely involved in coming up with plans for beautifying our whole area as inspired by the street murals, and now we've got an artist who's doing renderings of possible murals on the chain link fences that are rife in Lake City. Everyone's very excited about this. We have about 10 people that are on board to just work on vertical and street murals. Next. We really need to bring our community together, and we're working very hard on it. We want community bulletin boards in Lake City, and we're scoping out good places to do that. Next. This park where that bulletin board was in Portland was totally inspiring because it had all the infrastructure for bicycles and bicyclists and walkers, and it had green infrastructure, and it had a community bulletin board, and it was just like heaven. Next. We want to have that here on next to the 27th Avenue Greenway. We have 2 dead street ends that people use as walkthroughs that are heavily wooded. And we're looking at those as potential pocket parks and places for a community bulletin board. Next. And here's one that's wonderfully manicured and has been maintained by the neighbors even though it's not their property. Next. With an actual stream flowing through it. And this beautiful rock wall. So, in bringing together Lake City Greenways in its very brief history, you would not believe the amount of energy and excitement and creativity that's coming out of the community. We're all starting to discover what amazing people we have in our neighborhoods. And the Greenways movement, in addition to a lot of other things happening in Lake City, are really transforming the way we feel about where we live. So it's only going to get better. All right, Jennifer Litowski is going to talk about community building.
Thank you. So, like everyone else on the trip to Portland, it was a lot. I really enjoyed seeing the different engineering things in the streetscapes, and I've now joined the ranks of people who on their vacation stops to dodge out in traffic and take a picture of a crosswalk. But now, well, not actually into traffic. I wait for a break. Not that far on. But honestly, one of the best things about the trip to Portland was to have a couple of days to spend with this group of people and the community that we're building here. It was really inspiring to spend that time with people from all over Seattle and outside Seattle who really are passionate about creating safe streets that we can live on and enjoy. This picture is also at the park at Pullman and 13th Avenue. Everybody loved it. And it was really an amazing spot that that community came together and designed that park as part of the Greenways project. And you can see from what they put in there and the way it's used that it really has been a community building exercise for them. You go once. So, while we were there discussing and talking and taking pictures, this group of kids came up to skateboard in part of the park. And the reason I took the picture and what's really striking to me is for who's not in the picture. Their parents. It's a place that everybody uses enough and they feel safe enough that the kids can just, and the kids want to go there and the parents feel safe letting them. And I thought, you know, not everyone is going to be coming together to build a park on the corner. We can't have this every single corner. And not everybody's involved in a big like advocacy group or something. But it really speaks to how these kind of projects can be community building, because if you give us a safe place and a comfortable place where we want to be outside, and we're walking, we're having, next to playing with our kids, we're riding our bikes, we meet each other, and we talk, And that's what builds community. It's people who know each other and work together and will help each other out. One more. And we're doing this here in Seattle. I ride around on the weekends a lot with my son Spencer on a trail bike, and you wouldn't believe how often we actually run into people that we know. So he actually has complained a couple times, like, Mommy. So he complains sometimes, how do we always run into your friends? Which isn't true, because we run into his friends too. But the secret I haven't necessarily told my husband is that the reason it takes us longer when we're going somewhere by bike is because we actually run into friends, and then we stop and talk. And then I look at my watch and realize, oh, geez, I'm late, and we have to leave and go fast. So, like I said, it's really giving people a safe place and a comfortable place where we're outside and we can meet each other. Again, I think it's what really is building community. Thank you.
And finally, we have Dylan Ahearn talking about, he's going to talk, looking at not just at Portland, what Portland has done right, but what they've done wrong.
Yeah, so end with a downer.
Yeah.
I gotta kill the Portland in me. No, I was really impressed when Mark and Greg came down, when Eli invited them down when they first came down. One of the things that they mentioned, which I thought made a really big impression on me, was when they said when there's an area of town that doesn't have any bicycle facilities and we're looking to provide its service, the very first tool in our toolkit is a neighborhood greenway. And I was like, oh, that's really neat. They really like these things. That's really great. But I didn't really know, I knew they were great. I didn't really know just how great they were until I went down there and tried them out. I was a bit agnostic, because there's cycle tracks out there, there's multi-use trails, there's all these really great ways to get around. But when we went down, we biked on all these different routes. We were on the Esplanade, like this multi-use trail right along the river, and it was beautiful. And this is great route, but it's full of pedestrians too. And we have that same issue with our multi-use trails around here. When we're going to have the same issue on the waterfront. When you have a multi-use trail with a lot of course, the UW is a big issue. When you have a lot of pedestrians in that same space, when you're sharing room with pedestrians, it's not as low stress. It's not as good, especially for the pedestrians. Right? And so, and then there's the cycle track, and that's great because you're just going to have cyclists on there, and it's really clear you're going left, you're going right. But they're pretty narrow. Cycle tracks are pretty narrow, and once they start getting used by commuters a lot, once we have our cycle tracks through downtown, there's going to be a lot of commuters going down trying to get to work, and you're going to be on there with your kid, like going at half a mile per hour, and people are going to be trying to pass you, and it's going to be a little more stressful, a heavily used cycle track in a commercial area. But greenways, you have, pedestrians are separated, and they have their own sidewalk, and so you don't have to worry about that. And then the space you have is huge. You have a really wide space, Portland even more than us, of course. And you're sharing it with cars, yes, but when you do encounter those cars, it's pretty infrequent, and they're going really slow. Like, that's one thing I never worried about down there is the cars, even the cross streets. That's the main conflict you'd worry about, but they all stopped and were very courteous. But along the route, it was you didn't even really think about it with the width, and then the speed differentials were so low. So it really brought it home, and that's my positive takeaway. Yes, greenways. We should invest everything in greenways. They're the best. So the negatives, and this isn't like a knock against Portland. Yes, you can see how they've evolved down there with their greenways. Like Northeast Going is their newest and their best, and everyone loves it. And I think it's that way because it's first of all very straight, so you can't get lost. It's very well marked, and there's not many turns. So there's no confusion, and everything's very predictable, and that's what provides comfort in transportation is predictability. But when you go to their older greenways, bike boulevards, they're not so predictable. They're winding around corners. The sharrows tended to be like really far apart at intersections even, and I got lost a couple times. And then the wayfinding signs were very few and far between, and that's something I think that we could really hit home with here in Seattle, is to have really clear, especially at intersections where the greenway turns, really clear pavement markings and more wayfinding signs, just so you have that confidence that you're going to be on a greenway and you know where you're going and how you're going to get there. Let's see, what else? The other thing I think is really important is they never focused on pedestrians. Even when they were talking to us about it, it was sort of all about the bikes. And I think we could one-up them here by really bringing in pedestrians, and we've done that by, thankfully, when we do our greenways, we're not just doing pavement improvements on the greenway itself, we're doing it on the sidewalks too. And I think that's just really powerful to bring in our pedestrian advocate friends and say, look, this isn't just for the bikes. So I think that's something that could differentiate us from Portland. Lastly, it's the branding. I think we could do a better job than Portland at the branding. Their sign toppers were nice. People all around the city still call them bike boulevards or the bike route. They don't know their neighborhood greenways. There's no sign along the route that says you're on a neighborhood greenway. And like I said, it's sometimes easy to get lost. So I really like our Seattle neighborhood greenway signs that are going to give you confirmation and brand this as a nice community-based, safe place to be for you and your family. So that's where I think we could improve upon Portland and make it about Seattle's greenways and do a great job moving forward. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Now, before Councilmember Sally Bagshaw, Cathy, do you want to say a few words to sum things up, or should we just?
Well, I think the big takeaway that I heard from a lot of people was the idea that neighborhood greenways and what we're talking about is a kind of a social change, is a change in how we see our streets, how we're seeing our streets as safe, healthy places, as extensions of parks, as places for people, as places for children, as places that you feel comfortable on, that you have dignity on. I mean, that was the theme that I saw running through everything that we were saying. Yes, you can start businesses with them, but maybe even what Maddie said, this kasala, the Dutch word for comfort. I mean, that's what we're going for. We're looking for safe, healthy, comfortable streets. We're reclaiming our streets. So I think that's the theme that I heard from all of us.
Thanks, Cassie. I'm really honored to be able to introduce Councilmember Sally Bagshaw because she came to a meeting in Lake City that I was at the Lake City Community Council about a different topic and launched on Greenways. And my fate was sealed. She did Lake City the biggest favor that's been done for a really long time. It's had a tremendous impact on our community state of mind. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and thank you so much for what you've done for us.
Wow, I'm really touched. First, let me say thank yous. And thank you to Cathy, to Eli, to Dylan, for all of you who put, and Josh, for all of you who put the great program together that went to Portland. That was the second trip to Portland that I know of, and the first was something that our dear director over here from SDOT, Peter Hahn, 2 years ago said to me, you gotta go to Portland and you gotta see what's going on down there. And we put a program together, thought we were gonna go around Christmas time, and he said, don't be dumb, it's cold, it's wet. Let's wait until spring. We did. So it was spring just about 18 months ago when I first learned about neighborhood greenways, and I was completely sold from that point. Because I saw just what you were talking about, the community that has developed, the places that are calmed down, where people can go and walk and talk with each other. And it doesn't matter whether you are a senior or whether you are a toddler or that you're somebody that's bringing a toddler down there. It's a place where you feel comfortable. So I'm excited about this, as all of you know. And what has thrilled me is that in just this 18 months, there are now, 19 different parts of our city that have come together to say this is what we want. And I mean, just look around the room, because I know Eli has done so much at the University of Washington. Cathy, you were out there long before anybody else with Wallingford. And we've got the Ballard group, the Greenwood. West Seattle is coming forward, not just with West Seattle, but along Delridge and the avenues down there. And what is wonderful is this network that you have put together and the ideas that you just sent. I mean, I don't know how many of you have spent time going through the work that Cathy and Bob, and I don't know how many others of you were involved in this, but to identify the priorities, that's the kind of grassroots help that I think SDOT has appreciated, but certainly I know the council appreciates, because we can see this is something that our community wants, and it makes it much easier for us to go back and say, we want to put money here. Because what are we doing? We're making it safer, we're making connected neighborhoods, we're making a healthy community where people can walk and ride their bikes. This year I've had some marvelous opportunities. In the summer I went back east, and just to see some of the things that New York City and Boston had done. I also went to a place up in Brunswick, Maine, where Bowdoin College is. And one of the things that that city has done is to focus on seniors. And it's flatter than we are, but the weather is way worse. You know, they get snow and they get ice and then they get snow and ice and, you know, and it goes on. But they are advocating that seniors get out and ride their bikes, and they're making safe places for seniors. You know, again, it's a more of a cycle track kind of concept, but it's paint on the ground. And in some places they're putting dividers. But the whole idea is that healthy community, we can be out there. Again, whether you're a 3-year-old or whether you're somebody like me that will ride a bike if it's safe, it's just that whole sense of community coming together, and I love that. So where are we now? Here we are, 18 months later. 18 months ago, I didn't even know what a Greenway was. Now we've got this whole group, all of you coming together to say this is what we want to make our community a better place to be. Beacon Hill, you guys, Beacon Bikes has been way out in front, but Beacon Bikes is now connecting with Rainier. And you know that Rainier Valley, there are so many opportunities there, but we haven't really had the advocacy. Now we do. So a couple of things that I'm going to be doing, just want you to know. I've already written to my council colleagues using Cathy's document as being sort of like, take a look at this, colleagues. Really take a look at this, because people have come together and said, this is what can work. And we know from Portland that it doesn't have to be that expensive. It doesn't have to be the $1 million mile. In fact, it can be $100,000. It might even be less if what we're doing is paint and signage and speed bumps. Portland calls them sleeping policemen. I love that. But the whole notion is slowing down traffic. So that's the first thing. I'm really working with my colleagues to say this is important to me, and I know they know that it's important to me, and they're working with me on this. Secondly, I want to just God bless SDOT. Now, for those of you who don't know Peter Hahn, he's sitting right there. This man is fabulous, and what he has done in the last couple of years is bring on not just himself, but to bring on the best team that you can imagine. People who are bicycle and pedestrian savvy. Where's Dongho? I thought he was coming tonight.
He was.
Oh, okay. So Dongho, I mean, he gets the whole idea of bikes. You brought in Kevin O'Neill and promoted Sarah Zora, and so many others on your team. I mean, whether it's Mr. Sparman, you know, Geron gets this too, and they understand this isn't just about roads, cars, it's about transportation network. And that's what we are, as a part of that transportation network, and a really important one. So here is something that just knocked my socks off. Yesterday I'm meeting with Sally Clark. All of you know Sally. And we were talking about something completely different. We're talking about South Lake Union, some things that are going on. And she says to me, you have been bugging me for 6 months about a cycle track through downtown. I think it's time that we do it. And I think that it's time that we get going on it this budget cycle. At least get it out there. About a month ago, a number of us were there with the Downtown Seattle Association, and DSA has come together in ways that were unimaginable to me just a couple of years ago. They now know that because of Amazon, because of the biotechs down in South Lake Union, because of the new businesses that are springing up, that the employees that they're hiring, they're the guys and ladies that want to ride their bikes because they understand the health notions of this. They want an alternative form of transportation. So we're hearing loud and clearly from the businesses downtown that they know that economically this is a big deal for them too. So now we can tie that in with the economics of it, the health benefits, the safety benefits, and then connect the places we want to go, like parks. Seattle Parks Foundation, for example, we really understand. And my parks department, my main job on the council, I chair parks and neighborhoods. So the lovely thing about Greenways is that I can bootstrap it into any conversation. You know, is it about a park? You bet. Is it about a neighborhood? Absolutely. And every place in Seattle has a neighborhood that we want to connect. So one of the things that I loved was your concept of volunteer park to Judkin Park. The Olmsted brothers, when they first laid this city out, they planned, these boulevards all around. Well, we're one-upping them. The boulevards are great, but we also want to have these connections in places where people are living now. So I think we're making huge progress, and certainly within the 18 months that we've all been working on it, it's night and day difference. But now we can focus on the economics as well as the health benefits, as well as the connections.
Good evening, Captain. We'll pay members. Library closes 15 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is your last call. You can have for library card.
So if any of you guys have books you have to check out, you want to get the bicycles out of hockey. But the other thing is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. we've tried for the last 2 years to get that through. We got it through the House 98-0, 2 years in a row. The Senate got blocked by one person, God bless her. We're hoping that she's had a change of heart over the summer. But we are working with her. We are going to work with this. And I believe that we've made enough progress in reaching out to our senators, even to the east of the mountains, to say, this is really important to us. You guys don't have to do it. If you don't want 20 miles an hour on Camino Island, you don't have to have it. If you live in Yakima and you don't want it, you don't have to have it, but at least give us the right to do that. So I have great faith that we're going to make it happen. It's on our legislative agenda this year. We've already got the draft done, but it's within the top few. So we're going to make it happen this year. But with that, can I answer any questions? Yeah, Josh.
Now, you started off with a lot of thank you, and you need a big one. And so thank you very, very much. And you have been the champion for this in a truly extraordinary way.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I'm really honored.
And I want to pile on as well. I get to periodically just have brief interactions with my colleagues down at SDOT. I just got a chance to spend a deep, immersed chunk of time with the crew, and what you said about the team that you, Peter, have assembled around yourself there. This is a truly extraordinary group of individuals who are really committed to the vision that I know everyone in this room shares. And this is a ripe moment that we have right here. And you're coming out, Peter, and joining a community meeting like this in the evening and hearing what we as lay people have to say about this is a tremendous illustration of that right moment and what's going to happen here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So let's the two words that I use all the time, anytime I can talk about this, is system and network. Transportation system and network. And that means for pedestrians, and I try to emphasize that all the time. Cathy, you were one, I think, that first sort of got that in my vocabulary. And it's really helping because, there's still a little bike animus, but I think we're changing it. As soon as people understand, we're not saying bikes on every street. We're saying bikes on appropriate streets, pedestrians on appropriate streets, freight on appropriate streets. We can all get along, the real estate's limited, but a system and a network is what we're looking for. So those are the two things, and remember our pedestrian friends, and thank you again, all of you. Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for the help you're giving Gordon, Bob, and I with bootstrapping us with the council members and everybody else to get this connection across 520 implemented.
Oh, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
And we're making some progress. The one thing I'm concerned about right now that's on the books is the 520 mitigation from right at the end of Lake Washington Boulevard up to Madison Park. I think the plan is like 10 feet wide for a multi-use trail. And something, Dylan, you were saying, I looked at that and I went.
Excuse me? The library's closing in 10 minutes.
Okay, out of here.
Meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, bye. Anyway, that's a concern. Space.